Worlds of Fun opened in 1973, a project kicked off by Kansas City Chiefs owner Lamar Hunt. In 1995, Cedar Fair bought the park, and over the next 14 years, they added 5 new coasters. Then, after the economic meltdown of 2008, the investment dried up. That is, until now. For the park's 50th anniversary, Worlds of Fun finally announced a brand new coaster, a throwback to a long-lost park original, Zambezi Zinger. Built by GCI, this would be the park's 3rd wooden coaster, standing 74 feet tall and having 2,428 feet of track. On June 24th, I made my way to Worlds of Fun to try it out for myself, and I came off with very mixed thoughts. Today, let's look at the pros and cons of Zambezi Zinger. Let's start with the first pro, its theme and history. Zambezi Zinger was a coaster that opened with the park in 1973, a Schwarzkopf speed racer. Riders would line up in a single-file bobsled-style train, and the layout was full of drops and turns, really focusing on that terrain. This was removed in 1997, being moved down to Parque del Cafe in Colombia, where it still operates today. As part of their 50th anniversary celebration, they thought that naming and theming the ride after the original was a good idea, and I couldn't agree more. As a big history nerd, anytime a park can give a nod to its own history, it definitely should. It wasn't just the name and theme. Worlds of Fun took it one step further, and that's my second pro. Like a lot of Schwarzkopf coasters from the 70s, Zambezi Zinger featured an electric spiral lift. This has fallen out of style, no surprise, but Cedar Fair and GCI worked on bringing this back for their new coaster, and they pulled it off. Using booster wheels and steel Titan track, the spiral lift lives on. Does it add to the ride experience? No. But does it add to the history of the ride? Does it show that Cedar Fair and Worlds of Fun care? And does it give the ride a special quirk that makes it stand out from the rest? Yes, yes, and yes. It was a perfect touch. Now for the first con, and that's the slow-moving queue. I was there on a Saturday. The first Saturday, the ride was open to the public, and it was not open with the park. About 30 minutes later, when it did open, they only had one train going. These trains aren't very big, just 8 two-person cars. That's only 16 riders per train. So when they have one train, it's not a lot of fun. To add to the pain, Zambezi Zinger is part of the park's Fast Lane Plus system, and being a Saturday, it was being used early and often. Just beware that this could happen to you. So if the line is already long and they have one train going, I would probably just skip it. We waited almost an hour and we pretty much started on the bridge. I want to give the park some credit, and that's the next pro. They did get the second train on the track later in the day, and when I went back to film it, they were pumping those trains out very quickly. Being a brand new ride and only being able to send off 16 riders at a time, fast dispatches are very much appreciated. But it's not just because the ops are amazing. GCI and Worlds of Fun set them up for success, and that's my next pro. These trains have no seatbelts. I know, a lot of people like seatbelts. They serve as a secondary restraint system, and it seems like almost every new ride has one. To my surprise, no seatbelts on Zambezi Zinger. It seems like nothing slows down a dispatch like a seatbelt. You can see the difference on dispatch from newer B&Ms versus Raging Bull, for example. And if you compare other GCIs to this one, all those ops have to do is run down the line, check the lap bar, and send the train off. But those trains aren't perfect, and that's my next con. The seats and lap bars aren't very good. I'm a big fan of the Millennium Flyer trains. Those are the ones that GCI has been using forever. They're comfortable. Those T-bar lap bars are really nice. They don't come down hard on your legs. They come down higher on your body, more on your stomach. On these Infinity Flyers, the seats are hard. It felt small. It felt like you were kind of being shoved forward, and those lap bars are heavy and come down hard. There's not a lot of forgiveness there, the complete opposite of Millennium Flyers. These Infinity Flyers are supposed to be more nimble. They're compatible with launches and inversions. They're easier to maintain, so I'm sure these will be the wave of the future on GCI coasters. I'm not too happy about that, but maybe they'll make adjustments, maybe not. Either way, I'm not a fan. Once you head up the lift hill, you dive down that 74-foot drop, and that's my next pro. This was probably my favorite part of the ride, all things considered. I rode in the back, and it gives a really nice stomach-dropping feeling. I can't speak for the other rows. I can't imagine it's as good anywhere else. But if you're not riding in the back row, really, what are you doing? The back is always where the party's at. This drop is almost entirely composed of steel track, a continuation of the spiral lift. And that brings me to my next pro, the Titan track on the turnaround. Why they chose to put Titan track on this section, I don't know. But I love the feel of the steel track, and I'm glad they used it on part of the ride. I know, I can already hear the mob coming for me. Pitchforks and torches and all. The ones who think that Titan track is ruining wooden coasters, but it's just a little part of the ride, so chill out. This is one of the slower moments of the ride. It's kind of a high turn that wraps around the spiral lift, but there must have been a reason. Maybe the angle of the track, maybe the way the supports are positioned. Who knows? I'm not an engineer. After that turnaround, the ride rises up and hits the halfway point, and then it dives into the second half. That's your next pro. This is where it starts riding that terrain. It takes full advantage of those Infinity Flyer trains, making very sharp turns. It's very snappy. You're pretty much on the ground the entire time, only rising up to hit the final brakes. I love a snappy ride, and GCI is very good at providing that out-of-control chaotic feeling. These compact elements just making it that much better. That's enough praise for the second half. Now for the next con. That second half runs pretty rough. The first half of the ride has a lot of steel track, granted, but even the wood parts are pretty smooth. This is a brand new coaster. You should expect it to be smooth. Most new wooden coasters are. Then they get rough as time goes on, so I was disappointed in the second half. It just seemed way too bumpy for a ride that opened that week. It makes me think it'll only get worse. And maybe, since this is brand new, there's not much the park can do in terms of retracking to fix it. Maybe it's the trains, maybe it's the track, and if you disagree with me, please let me know in the comments. Also, mind you, I'm not saying this was Jackhammer City, just rougher than you would expect for a new ride. Kind of a related con, it seems like GCI misapplied its Titan track. Instead of that slow turnaround, it seems like they could have put it around some of those tight turns. Maybe they'll do this in the future, especially if people start complaining. But from a layman's perspective, it seems weird that they overlooked the rough parts when they had this tool in their toolbox to smooth it out. Another complaint, not just about the second half, but the ride as a whole. It's pretty much void of any airtime. I understand, not every wooden coaster is built for airtime, but it's nice to throw in some here and there. The best GCIs have a nice mix of airtime, laterals, snappy turns, and pure chaos. I'm thinking about how good Gold Striker and Renegade are. Zambezi Zinger does the chaos, but it forgets about the airtime. It was hard to tell if there were any good negative G moments, and maybe those hard heavy lap bars took them away. That may have been the case for some mild airtime pops, but as far as I can tell, it just wasn't there. I did ride this early in the day. It had only been open for about an hour when I rode it, but it was a very hot day, so I'm hoping my ride wasn't super slow. I did only get to ride it once, thanks to all those capacity issues I mentioned earlier, so I'm not an expert on this ride. I can just give you my experience. From the first drop to the final brakes, you get 41 seconds of ride time. That's not terrible, but I'm willing to call this a con for being a short ride. If you look at the ride time for all the active GCI coasters, and there's almost 30 at this point, this would rank in the bottom 5. Its pacing would also be around the bottom 5, so it's not like it's making up for its ride time with amazing pacing. It's a pretty minor con because 41 seconds on its own isn't bad, but it doesn't stack up among its peers. It does have the spiral lift, and that's not part of the ride time, but it is more of a feature than a normal lift, so there's that. Back to something nice to say about the ride. I found it to be very reliable the day I was there. This was supposed to open on May 26th. That was pushed all the way back to June 19th, and it did open late with one train the day I was there. That's not great, but when you're in a very slow moving line, you appreciate a ride that's not going to break down. It's amazing how often rides go down. You really notice it when you start hopping park to park, and it's annoying and it throws off your schedule. It ran great the hour I waited in line, and not once throughout the day did I see the ride shut down. Sometimes, new coasters are plagued with sensor problems. They need some fine tuning, but kudos to the park for making this work. One last con, and I think this is a big one. I think this ride is redundant for its park. I was afraid this might be the case when it was announced, and after riding it, it confirmed what I thought. Worlds of Fun isn't a big park. It's not like they have every type of coaster and they have no more gaps to fill. Something like an inversion-based launch coaster would be awesome here, but what they got was basically a smaller, slower, shorter, less interesting version of Prowler. Yes, they already had a snappy, train-based GCI wooden coaster, one that actually has some good airtime and runs kinda rough. Now they have two, and their new one isn't as good. You could say Zambezi Zinger appeals to more of a family-style crowd, and maybe that's true, but it feels too big, fast, and intense to be a true family coaster. Plus, I guess it was supposed to have a lower height requirement, but now it's set at 48 inches, same as Prowler. It's great that Worlds of Fun got a new coaster after a 14-year drought, but I think they could have done better with their choice. Now, the moment of truth. Where does Zambezi Zinger rank on my overall list? When it comes to wooden coasters, I would put this ahead of White Lightning at Fun Spot Orlando, and even ahead of Legend at Holiday World. But I wouldn't put it over Zeus at Mount Olympus. I think, out of 580 coasters that I've ridden, number 144 is a good spot. I liked it, it's a fun ride, but as a coaster nerd, I have to critique it, and it definitely has a lot of flaws. If you've ridden Zambezi Zinger, let me know what you thought in the comments below. Where does this rank among GCIs? Where does it rank in the park? And what do you think about adding this in a park that already has Prowler? Regardless, I hope this is the start of a wave of investment for Worlds of Fun, my new home Cedar Fair park. And this is not just a one-off for their 50th anniversary. If you enjoyed this video, please drop a like. And if you're new here and love coasters, please give me a sub. I have a playlist with other coaster reviews. Also, check out my links below for my Discord server, and my second channel where I post copyright-free off-ride footage, and my baseball channel if you love baseball like I do. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.